Frank, you wanted to give us a big, bold, audacious idea.
Well, sure. Well, I have two grandiose ideas. One's much smaller scale. One is very large scale. It'd actually be a federal project that the city of Columbus, the state of Georgia, and everyone would work with. First of all, I was speaking to one of my coaches who's actually from out of town, Louisville, Kentucky. And when she came down here, she thought it was the weirdest thing because we have football games, high school football games, on Friday and Thursday nights. And we only have 2 locations for football games. Coming from Louisville, of course, Louisville's a population of 500,000 plus, much larger than Columbus. But I think a project would be to maybe build another stadium so we don't have Thursday night football for high schoolers. Because I like to stay out late when I go to a game, and going to Columbus High, I got schoolwork the next day due. So. I think that's definitely something to consider. I think it'd be amazing, like possibly at Lake Bottom, to turn that into like a stadium, a high school stadium, because that way you'd be right in the center of Midtown, and it would just kind of be something else to do in Midtown. Of course, it's across the street from Columbus High too, so I like that. But I think that would be a really great project for the Youth Advisory Council to take on. Another thing that I've just kind of grown interest in lately is there's a proposed route for a new interstate that would go through Columbus. I don't know if you're familiar with it, I-14, going from, I think it's Galveston, Texas to Augusta, Georgia. The most recent update with that is in, I believe it is Texas. They're already building parts of it and actually physically putting up I-14 signs. I know Louisiana's given them some trouble, but I think most of the state boards have passed it. Of course, please excuse my lack of knowledge on the topic. I'm just starting to kind of read up on it, and I'd like to actually start, kind of a just interest group. But I just thought it was something I'd bring up, and as mayor of Columbus, you could maybe talk about it at some of the meetings. I don't think that's something that Youth Advisory Council could necessarily tackle. I think the stadium would be much more feasible. But as the city government in Columbus and your connections with the state and the federal level, I think it'd be an amazing thing to kind of look into, and kind of adding to what I was saying about infrastructure earlier. So if you want to say anything about that.
Awesome. How in the world did you learn about I-14? Just by the way. I bet if I had asked for hands, there have been less than 10 people in here that even knew what I-14 was. How do you know about I-14? Yeah.
All right. Well, I have always been looking for a way, for some reason since I was little, to expand I-185, because I thought that was the way, that's what Columbus needs to do. But that's ridiculous, because you'd have to go straight through Fort Benning. Or if you went around Fort Benning, it would just be longer. I always wanted I-185 to go straight down to Panama City. Thought it'd be a quick trip to the beach. But, of course, that wouldn't work, like I said, because of the military. And then I just kind of started looking up future interstates of the United States. And I-14 was on a wiki page, and I just kind of read more into it. I had heard some other talks about it, but I just kind of looked it up one day, and there's also a expansion, I think, on I-20, or not I-20, whatever interstate goes through Birmingham to bring it down to Columbus. And then there is plans for an expanded I-185, but the I-14 has actually been approved, though. The studies have been done with exactly. So, and like I said, they're building parts of it out in Texas, so I think it's something that's going to happen. I just like to expedite the process.
Do you want to be on our Citizens Advisory Committee for Transportation? Rick? I'm just telling you, I got you two members already. First of all, yes and yes, and how awesome. You're totally right about the stadiums. I'll tell you a couple things. One, there's going to be a new Spencer High School built, and it has sort of a mega stadium built in. So that's going to give you one more. That's great. And there's always talk, although I hope I don't start a rumor that they put out somehow, but there's been, if they have, it's going to be resurrected. There's been a lot of talk about CSU getting football. Yes, no, who knows? And I don't know if they're going to take a straw poll and decide or what the future is, so don't publish, Ben, that the mayor said there's going to be a football team at CSU. But they've been talking about it a lot and weighing it, and if they did, you'd be talking about some sort of facility there. So awesome idea, and I can say there's a lot of people thinking about those kinds of things. So the other thing, I-14. Rick, I want to hear an update on I-14. And yes, there are plans actually to run 85 on down to Panama City, isn't it, Rick? But it cost us a gazillion dollars. So tell us about I-14 and I-85.
I-14 was a project that was done by Congress probably about 5 years ago in terms of looking at a route really running from just north of Augusta. It was supposed to have a terminus at Meridian in Mississippi. And the idea was it was going to connect Augusta, Macon, Columbus, and it was going to go into Montgomery and on into Mississippi. They did the initial study on it, and we were part of that study. But the problem we had with it was, where was the road going to actually come through Columbus? I mean, they were looking at, of course, coming down J.R. Allen Parkway, but when you get down to a certain point, right there at Flat Rock Road, it breaks back into it goes from a limited access highway to a full access, meaning there are neighborhoods and businesses on both sides. And if you had allowed that to be, going there to be a 4-lane with limited access, you're going to take out the businesses in the neighborhoods that were around that. And so we raised some real objections to that. And I think they saw that with a lot of other communities because they just didn't want to go in there like they did with the interstates of when they first started building interstates and wipe out neighborhoods. We certainly didn't want to have that as well. They were looking at, I think, also some routes to the south, around Fort Benning, and of course north of us as well. But I don't think they ever gained any real physical strength on that one, or any physical strength from the financial side of it. I just don't think it ever materialized. I don't know of any funding that's actually going on in Texas or anything else with this project. Not to say it won't materialize sometime in the near future. It could well be under this new administration. But for the time being, we have not had any action on I-14 occurring at all.
Well, Frank was saying he'd heard that they started some construction. So why don't we do this? Why don't we look into it and see an update on CAC? The Citizens Advisory Committee is the transportation arm of basically the transportation planning function for this entire region. And it's very important, actually. I served on the board, and it was one of my most favorite boards and experiences ever. But you're on TV, and and citizens get to watch and hear these road projects debated. And you know, Rick's right. When you start trying to run a major interstate through an already developed area, you get back to that problem I was telling you about between San Francisco and LA with the train, right? But we do have some rural area north of us, and you know, you got a lot of minds. You can figure out a problem, so a challenge. So let's update it, Rick, on the next CAC meeting. That way it'll be televised, and maybe by that time you'll be on the CAC committee, and we can do that.